Larry Mitchell here. Just want to remind you to watch my friend Dave on Knaggs Says on YouTube at Thursday night, 7 o'clock, maybe Thursday night, 8 o'clock. Catch Knaggs Says with Dave and Ty.
I did screw this up. Hey, and we're live, and it's only live if Dave screws up. So, welcome to Knaggs Says. Today is October 29th, and you're tuned in to Knaggs Says, where musicians get together and inspire each other to play more guitar. And, hey, Ty, how you doing? This is a great show tonight. We have actually an incredible show tonight.
Yeah, hey, Dave. Good to see you. Happy Thursday. Always good to be with you on Thursday evening. And you're right, tonight's show is we are so lucky to be joined by these two very special and talented guests. We're honored to have Mr. Peter Wolf with us tonight. Peter has more than 35 years of experience in the music industry. He is a co-founder of Knaggs Guitars, and he currently heads up all facets of sales and marketing for the company. We all know that Knaggs Guitars is creating some of the most extraordinary instruments in the world today. Also joining us is Knaggs Says alumni and a Knaggs artist, Mr. Eric Steckel. Eric is a powerhouse guitar player, singer, songwriter, and producer. His music is often described as blues metal. It's unique, memorable, and full of blazing guitar fireworks. Today is a big day for Eric. He has a new product released we're going to talk about, and we're thankful to both of these gentlemen who have agreed to join us for a conversation tonight. Please welcome Peter Wolf and Eric Steckel. Gentlemen.
Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
Thanks for having us.
You bet. It's our pleasure. So, Dave, are you good if we just jump right in? And
Yeah, let's just jump right in. Absolutely. We can say hello to everyone. During the show. Hi, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, let's jump right in.
Peter, you and Joe formed this company in 2009 on the heels of the greatest recession in U.S. economic history. Tell us about the vision.
So far.
So far. Well, look, let's
Yeah, you have to be.
let's don't be too optimistic on the recession front.
But yeah, you're right. I know what you're talking about.
But yeah, tell us about the vision. I mean, that's an unusual time to launch a company, to say the least. Obviously, you were motivated by a very powerful vision. Tell us about the vision you had for Knaggs in its inception.
Well, I need to go back a little further to answer the question appropriately. What you may know, or people may know, I've been working with PRS since '86.
Yes.
So I became a dealer first in '86, and then I became the distributor for Central Europe, and then I started PRS Guitars Germany in 1990, so that's 30 years ago. And then by '97, I started to work directly for PRS as their international sales manager first, and then 6 years later as their director of global sales and marketing. So during that time, obviously I was visiting PRS a lot more and on a very regular and frequent basis. And, you know, I started to see who the players are, who the people internally were, who the guys were who, you know, were making things. And that's when I met Joe and, and learned that that he was really the driving force when it came to designs. and making the guitars, not only designing them but also making them. And that's when I kind of like realized a few things I hadn't realized before, and we started to become really good friends. And that was around the time where the private stock program was starting, and later on I would take him on trips overseas, Europe, Japan, and we would do things that nobody had ever done before, like carving sessions. You would bring bodies and necks, and you would start carving bodies and necks in front of people. So what I'm trying to say is there was a learning curve on my end as to whom those guys or that guy was who actually made things happen. And that was Joe. So fast forward, by about 2008 or 2009, things at PRS had become very interesting, to use that word, and which led to my departure in February 2009. Joe stayed for another 3 months, and we didn't really speak in those 3 months because he didn't want me to be involved in whatever decision he was going to make, if he was going to stay or not, or if he was going to leave. And I didn't want that either. So we really didn't speak for 3 months until I got a call from him at the end of June 2009 saying that he's made up his mind and he's going to leave. About 2 weeks later, we went to North Carolina with our families for a week, and that's when we started to plan. So, I don't know if either of us knew at that point in time what actual financial and economical climate we were in. We just did what we did, and we started, and it was really hard. You couldn't get a loan to save your life, but we made it happen anyway. And we had people who helped, and we got the company started by October, mid-October, around this time, 11 years ago.
It's fantastic.
Well, I mean, certainly a big time move.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Yeah, big time move. Very, very courageous. And like I said, obviously there was a clear business vision, for the company. Even if you weren't fully aware of the impact of the economic conditions that were surrounding all of us at that time, and you had a firm foundation that you were going to produce this amazing product.
Yeah, I think Joe and I had probably different visions. Some of them aligning to each other. Some of them may have not. And what I mean by that is, like, my vision was I've been working with Paul Hamer, I've been working with Paul Smith, I've been working with like every maker since the early 80s. Okay, so that's pretty much everybody out there. And some were really good at certain things and some were good at other things. I did not before meet anybody who kind of had it all, if you will. And what I mean by that is, it's one thing to draw, okay, to make a drawing. It's another thing to take that drawing and turn it into a build. It's another thing to actually build it. It's another thing to finish it appropriately. It's another thing to be able to carve the neck. It's another thing to be able to carve the body. There's so many steps in the process, and I had never really met anyone before that I have seen with my own eyes, okay, not heard or read about, but seen, who could do that. So my vision was that Joe was the only one I've ever worked with who was capable of building guitars, designs, adapting from the F camp, as I call it, from the G camp, obviously from the PRS camp, because that's where he originated from.
Mhm.
When I look at the market right now, I see many one-trick ponies, and don't take that wrongly. There's nothing wrong with the one-trick pony, okay? If the pony is really fast and really good looking and really, and really good.
That's right.
It's just from a guitar building point of view, from a historical point of view. To give you an example and to explain what I mean, Fender has never really been able to build a calf top guitar with a set neck that
Right.
went anywhere.
Right.
Gibson has never been able to build a double cut flat top guitar with a bolt-on neck that went anywhere. Okay.
And a 6 on the side, and yeah.
I could use a few more names if you wanted me to, but for the saving time, I don't. Okay. So what really my personal vision was about Knaggs is to build stuff that we came up with, original designs, not copying anybody, not copying any shape, not copying any headstock, not copying any accomplishments from anybody before us. Come up with original designs with our own twist, based on knowledge, experience, and our personal take, but do that in all directions without limiting ourselves to one camp, one direction, one idea, one thing. And that is, I think, what my personal vision was. I think Joe's vision, and you can ask him anytime if you ask him to come on the show, his vision was to finally start to sign his own paintings, okay? After building 25 or 30 years, coming up with designs, coming up with head neck joints, the double stain program. I mean, a number of designs: Mira, Scala, hollow body, single cut, single cut, Gary Granger bass, SEJ. I mean, the list is endless of instruments that he designed while at PRS. And I think he was getting to a point where he was kind of going, well, why do I not sign my own paintings? Which I think is a very understandable thought for anybody who's creative and who's an artist. It's like you write a song and then you give it to somebody and that song becomes a multi-million-dollar seller and you don't get any royalties. There's something wrong with that.
Right. I agree.
So that's just my take on what his vision was. And he also didn't really want to be an executive sitting in an office. He's a guitar builder. He's a designer. He's a maker. He loves making guitars. That's what he does every day. He's in the shop every day at 7 a.m. and he builds guitars. And that's what he wants to do. And that gives him solitude and satisfaction, and running a team and working within the team. That's his thing, Then he's off. When he's gone, he's off. He doesn't go online. He's not much on the internet. He's not out there all the time. He may play golf or play guitar, whatever he does. But when he is at the shop, that's what he does. And he's doing it every day.
And I think that's extraordinary that you can take this idea that doesn't exist and make it into something that's physically tangible, and then but making it isn't quite enough. No matter how genius it is, right? You guys found a way to actually connect it to extraordinary players like Eric, who found Knaggs. Eric, listening to Peter dissect the vision about from origination to execution, how does that then transfer to a player's perspective? How does that transfer to someone like you once you get it in your hands?
Well, the way he just described Joe is the way I hope somebody would describe me as far as my music. Like saying, it's almost like the Knaggs approach is also my approach, and it's almost like it was total fate that that we were going to all find each other, because I don't want to sound like anybody. Now, when I say that, of course, there's influences. Of course, you look at a Knaggs guitar, you see influences. You listen to my playing, you see influences. But it's not a cover band. It's not overtly saying, "Hey, this is a Van Halen song," or "This is a," It's not like that. It's all about saying, let's put our spin on it. Let's make it, make it come from the heart, but still, pay respect to what's come before, but not try to copy and not try to be a one-trick pony. Like it's funny because before this went live, we were talking about how on the last record, every song is like a TV episode in a series. Like none of them sound the same. Mm-hmm. And I see it kind of with Knaggs. It's like they have all these different models that all look so different and play different and sound different and feel different. A lot of guitar companies don't do that. A lot of guitar companies say, well, this is our thing. We're good at it. And here you go. Here's 12 color options of whatever.
That's right. I agree.
Like you got like all these different, if you're you want a single coil Stevie Ray tone, they'll build you something like that. You want that, there's all different things in one brand. So yeah, to kind of answer your question, I think the Knaggs approach and the Steckel approach is similar.
I'd go on the limb and say that Knaggs is the only company that doesn't make a Stratocaster, that doesn't make a Les Paul, that doesn't make an Explorer, that doesn't make an SG or a 335, but they have their own version of guitars that may sound like those guitars, but visually they have their own look. They are their own guitar. This is a company that makes a guitar that doesn't look like a guitar that was made in the 50s. It's amazing. It is amazing that Joe Knaggs and Peter Wolf and the powers that be that build these guitars have the empty canvas, and they paint freehand and make these instruments. It's just incredible. As far as I know, they are the only company that does that.
Well, thank you, Dave. If you look at our models, if you really take a close look, the Sharp Tank obviously is inspired by a Tele.
Yeah.
Yes.
The 7 is inspired by a Strat.
Yeah, but it's inspired by, but it's not. It's not.
It would have been easy. It would have been easy to, the drawings are out there. It would have been easy to copy those exact guitars. Okay.
I wasn't going to show this, but you guys don't do this. You guys don't do this.
No, we don't.
And that's what makes
and
you
also,
guys...
Yeah, we don't do that. And we also don't make guitars with bolt-on necks.
Right,
None
but
of our
I'm just saying the
guitars have
shape.
bolt-on necks.
Just the shape I'm talking about.
Sure.
No,
I know. It's like, it... yeah. We did not want to and do not want to copy existing shapes. And let me just talk about shapes for a second, okay? All shapes, all of them, okay? Sort of like derived from the Italian guitar makers in the 16, 17, and 1800s. Actually, I should mention the violin makers to start with, because that's how the guitar makers came about. And that was all long before trademark laws existed. There weren't even trademark lawyers. That was not invented until the 50s, okay? So all shapes go back to that period of our world. And some of them have become more popular and some of them have become less popular. And then there's the off shapes, things like Explorers, okay? Or Flying V's, okay? Or even the SG that was totally, influenced by the Batman era and the Batman comics in the 50s. You look at an SG. Totally Batman, okay? It's fully Batman. So what I'm saying is every period of time has their way of impacting things. Think of it in the sports world. Think of it as in the fashion world. Very similar. Now there are other elements when it comes to guitar making, because there is some things that are called functionality, balance, and things like that you don't necessarily have in the fashion world. Okay. So take the Knaggs, for an instance, the guitar you're holding right there. Okay. Can you hold it up in the camera so I can kind of explain where I'm coming from?
Yep.
Some people, many people may say it's sort of like a Les Paul shape. Maybe some people say it's sort of like a Les Paul and Telly shape combined. We could have easily made a Les Paul Junior if we wanted to. It's easy, okay? The drawings are out there, but we didn't want to. And we also don't like the shape in the first place too much, okay? The Les Paul shape, and this is just my opinion, okay, for what it's worth, and you can call me crazy, but the Les Paul shape is sort of wrong, actually. You can either play it very low, down there, and it looks really cool, like Jimmy Page type of cool, down there, when you play chords, okay? Or you have to play it very high up because it's completely wrongly balanced, okay? It does not really hang right if you hang it where the normal 85, 90% of the players hang it. It just doesn't. So that's why our upper horn is a little bit more extended, changes the balance completely, goes for all Knaggs, okay? So those are types of things that when we first started to work on those designs impacted our lines and our shapes and our calls, besides all the other things I've mentioned. But it's still a great shape. I love that shape. And when I look at it now, since I look at our guitars so much, when I look at a Les Paul now, it looks odd to me.
Yeah, I'll jump in there and say that
Yes.
I get these Facebook memories, of things that I've done, like on this day last year, whatever. And right around this time last year, I was in Italy doing a clinic tour promoting Mezzabarba amps and subsequently Knaggs. And the last clinic of the tour, some guy brought his original 1960 Les Paul. Rich dude brought his Les Paul, and so we have a photo of like my candy Knaggs sitting next to a very similar colored Les Paul. And what's funny is when you see the two together, it does make the Les Paul look really bloated. Like I'm so used to seeing my Knaggs, and I got so used to that shape that I'm kind of with Peter on that one. When I see a Les Paul now, it looks so obese and so bloated to me. And so, yeah, and my eyes go more towards the Knaggs shape. And so for whatever that's worth,
And that's not to say what I said. That's not to say I'm not bashing the shape. Obviously it's an incredible, incredibly successful company. I'm just coming from a different time. When I got into the industry in the late 70s and I became a partner in a music store, we couldn't give a Les Paul away. I literally could not give a Les Paul away, okay? You had to pay people to buy one, almost. Same goes for Fender. They were so bad, okay? They were 11, 12 pounds. They were heavy as bricks, okay? The fret job was a joke, okay? The finish was a joke. So that's when I came into the musical instruments world, you could not give Les Pauls or Strats or Tellys away.
What year was that?
Which was Europe. 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 80.
So what were you selling, like Charvel guitars?
I was selling Hammers, I was selling Charvels, I was selling Ibanez, I was selling everything else but Gibson or Fender, because he couldn't give them away. Nobody wanted them. They were really bad.
It really wasn't until Appetite for Destruction that anybody gave a damn about the Les Paul again in the 80s.
You got it. You got it.
It was Slash
That
and Tom
video,
Kiefer.
that video in front of the church on November Rain is what resurrected Gibson for the third time in my time in the industry, okay? It was 3 resurrections in the last 40 years that I've been part of it, Okay.
Hmm.
So, not to bash anything, I'm just
Well, I think a
okay.
key takeaway. I think a key takeaway there is that everything is intentional, right? And one thing builds upon the next. And so that horn, that shape of the kanai, isn't just a drawing or a design that was done. It was everything, every line of that instrument was done for a very specific reason and has an impact on the playing experience
Yes,
for the
and
player. And
it's
I think that's
and
very
it's
important.
yes, and it's also that, when we started, we had the Chesapeake Chop Tank and the Chesapeake 7. Those were the two guitars that Joe had designed prior, while still working at PRS. Chop Tank in 2001, and I think the 7 was actually before the Chop Tank. And then the Patuxent and the Potomac, two acoustics.
Hmm.
My point was, when we started talking about what we were going to do, that I felt we needed a calf top guitar line. So between us getting together in July of 2009 and October 2009, Joe actually drew the Kenai, the Kia, the Cheyenne, the Chenna. Four guitars. Four guitars in 3 months. He drew. I looked at the lines too. I, probably had some impact on some of the lines. But we actually came up with four completely new guitars, new headstocks, new body shapes in 3 months, and then built those guitars between November 2009 and March 2010, and took 9 models to the Frankfurt show in 2010.
Hmm.
That's unheard of.
That's how it all started.
That's incredible. So the Frankfurt show was the first unveiling of Knaggs guitars.
Yeah. April
Public
2010, Frankfurt was the official launch of our brand. Yes.
Yeah. And so soon the I also think a key takeaway too, because Eric is a very modern. I hate to put labels on anything, Eric, but for the sake of brevity, you have very fundamental roots. I mean, we've talked about that together before, and you have your influences.
Yes.
But you're a very modern player. I mean, in terms of not just all the gymnastics, but the phrasing, the tone, the way you're controlling a lot of gain. And these guitars play. They don't play like a historical instrument.
Right.
There's a different type of playability to these instruments that equip you to do what you do.
Yeah, and that's what was so cool about when we did the Candy idea, when we did those 11 or 12 actually Candy guitars, because it's like, you're looking at this beautifully aged, sunburst, very classic, iconic looking guitar. It's like, I look at it like those guys that pull up next to you with like a Honda Civic, but under the hood they got some like 700 horsepower sleeper. It's like a sleeper guitar, because it's like it plays and sounds totally modern and aggressive, and it sustains, more than the guitars back in the 60s did and all that stuff. But visually, it still fits like all my heroes and my influences. You know what I mean? It's that perfect blend of like where I started as a player and who I worship and still worship, but also it's still fresh. Like the sound of that guitar and the way it plays is not like an old Les Paul. And I mean that in a good way, because the old Les Pauls are great, but when you pick up an old Les Paul, it feels historical. It feels like you're in a really cool museum and you're like, wow, this is like a really important piece of equipment here. And you respect it and you revere it, but it's not like getting behind. It's like going from a muscle car, a 1965 Mustang, to a brand new Ferrari. It's like,
that's it. I'm just going to say that.
It's like,
just going to say it.
You respect and revere the old sort of dinosaur for what it is, and it's still badass, and nobody could say different. But it's not going to perform the way a 2021 Ferrari would perform. And that's the way I look at it with the Candy. Was it plays modern, and it looks old. And to me, that was like, there you go. That's
Right. I was going to say.
Good way of putting it.
Yeah.
I never actually really thought about that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was going to say that these guitars absolutely look like muscle cars, but perform like Formula One race cars.
Right. Now, I will add that the Candy guitar is the only Knaggs that, in my collection of Knaggs, that is supposed to look old. Like all my other ones are very modern looking, like they have the satin finish or they have the racing stripes or whatever. It really suits this, that really suits my sound very well. But the Candy was that one-off thing where I said, look, I don't, I'm not really a big relic guy, but for this particular guitar, it was relic so perfectly that I said, yeah, well, we got to do it.
It was a really great project, and you remember Eric, when you first talked to me about it, and I was like hesitant, and this is maybe kind of important to explain.
Yeah.
I was sort of hesitant because I don't want to promote anybody else's brand. Okay, I've been doing that for too long, quite honestly. And so I was sort of like thinking about what we could do. But then once I thought about it long enough, the idea of having us build a relic replica of one of these, one of these classic old bursts that Eric's friend in Australia had was very appealing to me. I was interested in finding out if we can actually pull it off and do it.
Yeah.
But in the Knaggs Kanai, ES Kanai, okay, in our shape, with our appointments, with the way we sand guitars and make guitars. And then the icing on the cake was that we reverse engineered pickups of that particular Les Paul. That was a huge one too, because that's a big part of it. And having, Samo and MJ, replicate the readings and build these pickups into that guitar that we made 11 of, actually 12, Eric's prototype, but only 11 for sale. That was a very interesting scenario at that point to me, and that's exactly how it went. And astonishingly enough, we pulled that off. He got back from Australia and at the end of May 2019, 19.
Yeah.
And by August we were shipping the first candies. Okay. Yeah. So we pulled that off in 3 months, and that includes getting the pickups reverse engineered, getting every single one of them, all the tops handpicked, having Joe and Lucas and everyone else relic them the way we did. I mean,
yeah, amazing.
Well,
and then in comparison to some other insane price points out there, I looked at the Dale Wilson Custom Shop Strat today. Okay, for £8,000.
Yeah.
Okay, that's about $10,000. Okay.
Yeah.
We can build that. We can build that in a tier 3 7 with a better tremolo, solid steel that actually stays in tune, for $6,000 less.
Yeah.
And it just blows my mind. Okay, to look at that and go, okay, you're building the same thing you've been building since 1953. Nothing has changed. And why is that bolt-on, nailed-together guitar £8,000?
And it's less than a tier 3, maybe a tier 5 in your, if in equivalence.
We don't even have
to
tier
Knaggs.
5.
I
we don't
know that, but
have any tiers. It's just
right.
like,
But I'm saying it would be the equivalent of a tier 5, because the tier 3 is even prettier.
It just blows me away. And if you put those guitars into any real player's hands, okay, people who really play and can play and know the difference, it's like they're gonna go, okay, hold on a second.
Yeah.
What is going on here?
I'll jump in and just say something just from a player's perspective on the whole Knaggs thing. Like, what I look for are, like, there's so many guitars out there because people always hand me guitars. Like people come up to me after a show and they want to, and it's cool. I don't mean this in a bad way. People want to like impress me with a cool guitar they bought or whatever, and it's great. But what I notice about 99% of guitars that people hand me, even really expensive ones, high-end ones, there's always this feeling of like, it's like there's always this stiffness of like it just came out of the box or something. Like it was like warehouse for a while. And sometimes people have had these guitars for 10 years and they still feel stiff and brand new. And that to me is like the first thing that if a guitar is stiff to me, it's like I immediately know I'll never bond with this. So the thing about the Knaggs guitars is like, I think, Peter, when you shipped me the Blue Cobra, I don't think like that was one of the few guitars that I didn't pick up in person. Like that was sent through the mail. I pick it up out of the box and it's like, it felt like it was like a baseball glove that I had been wearing. Like it just felt like I already owned it. It felt like I already had this guitar for 10 years. So for me, it's like the lack of stiffness of the way a guitar feels out of the box for me is like, I would say as far as playability is the number one thing for me. So
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that that's the key. And my own personal experience with the brand and with the guitars, and I mean, this is my favorite Knaggs for lots of reasons.
Oh yeah.
And that's part of the Candy project, Peter, that you were referencing.
I spotted it earlier.
Yeah, you have no reason to remember this encounter whatsoever, but you helped me validate the legitimacy of the guitar when it was for sale. And look, I mean, that kind of customer interaction is rare these days. But
yeah, I actually do remember, whether you think I don't or not, I do.
But needless to say,
here's the beauty, and that's something that I think is equally important. First of all, I'm always working 24/7, 365. But I do it because I like it. And I do it because I like helping people out. I don't like people letting hang people waiting for answers and never getting them. Okay, that's a very important one. The other side, obviously, of the coin is if we would make 5,000 guitars a year, it would not be possible for me to provide that personal care to most people that I interact with. Okay, it's just mathematically impossible at some point. So what that means is, and Joe and I have made that call very early on. We don't want to become as big as any of the ones that have become big. We have no interest in that. Size on that end is not important. Okay, we want to make a good number of guitars. We want to build whatever we want to build. We're not going to be part of just one drawer or camp. And we want to do it in a team where we know everyone's wives and kids, where we know our customers and their wives and kids, if possible. And the people that end up buying the guitars, we want to know most of those too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when it gets beyond that, especially with Joe and my prior experience with the other company, when you have venture capitalists and investors and accountants and lawyers involved on a daily basis, I've done that. I'm done with that. I don't need that anymore. I have no interest in any of it, and Joe doesn't either.
I'm just going to jump in here because this is just wide open for me to take this. There's definitely the gear. If you look at like all the gear that I'm using now, so Knaggs guitars, Mesa Barb amps, all this stuff. This is a cliche. I hear this a lot. People say, "Oh, this company is like family to me." I hear that said all the time, and I always laugh because I think to myself, okay, sure, but I can tell you, like, an example is last year about this time, I was playing soccer in a town square in where the Mezza Barba amps guy.
Farnese, Italia.
Yeah, I was in Farnese, Italy, playing soccer with a 3-year-old son of the Mezza Barba dude, and with his girlfriend, and after a clinic tour, like, you know, and Peter and Joe and I have had dinners with the families and stuff. So it literally is a family. It's not just like a marketing cliche when I say that. And that's that. What that does is it gives everyone a sense of loyalty. So it gives me as an artist a sense of loyalty to the brand, but it also gives the brand a sense of loyalty to me. Because, for instance, today Mezza Barba and Knaggs were sharing my Seymour Duncan thing. Now, in the case of Mezza Barba, does that really have anything to do with their amp sales? Maybe, maybe not. But they still felt like, well, Eric's a part of our family, a part of our team, so we're going to share his post and promote it. And that's the kind of stuff you'll never get that if you work only with the massive big box sort of brands, you know. So yeah, it literally is a family. So that's just wanted to jump in.
Well, the funny thing is, for me personally, and I'm an outsider looking in, when I think of Knaggs guitars, I think of Mezza Barba amps, and when I think of Mezza Barba amps, I think of Knaggs guitars as well. It's almost to me like it is a family, even though it's not. They're two separate companies, two separate products.
Hey, we're good friends, you know. We
but
talk.
It just
we
makes
talk,
sense.
Yeah.
That with one there is the other.
We talk.
It just makes sense.
We talk a couple of times a week, you know, and we're coming from a very similar original vision or idea. So, you know, the other side is we have no intention of making amplifiers. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Piangelo has no intention of making guitars. So there's never going to be a competitive element. We're also never going to make pickups because there's people out there who have spent 30, 40, 50 years winding pickups to figure it out. Okay?
Right.
We're not going to live long enough, Joe and I, to figure that one out too. So we have no interest. So for us, it's not about competition. You know, one of the things that always like made me go, why the fuck are we doing this? When I was at PRS was when he started to try to make amps. Okay?
Yeah.
And I went like, why? Okay? Right now we on every Marshall ad in the world. We on Mesa Boogie ads in the world with the triple rectifiers and dual rectifiers, okay? We've been on Zoom ads. We've been on all. What I'm saying is these companies use our guitars for their full page 4-color ads. The day Paul started making amps, which was a disaster the first 8 years, if it still not is, I don't know about it, I haven't paid attention. Everybody stopped using our guitars for their ads.
Of course.
It's like, why?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, and you started seeing less people using the guitars in general.
Yeah, exactly.
It
And by the
seemed
way,
like-
that goes the other way around too. You know, if there's a great amp maker, a famous amp maker that suddenly makes guitars, although they have no idea how to make guitars, it's like, why?
Mhm.
Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that to your image? Oh, you hired somebody who can make them? Okay. You know, it's like, no. Why? I don't get the idea or the concept of that.
To me, it sounds like, you know, when companies when they have a lot of success quickly, they just get big for their britches and they say, well, we can do no wrong. So let's just start doing stuff that we
I get that. I understand the monetary side of it perhaps, or the financial side of it perhaps, but you know, are people really that ignorant out there that they don't get what's going on? Is it like, are people, my question to the marketplaces, are people out there, buyers, actually people who spend money to buy these things, are they really not seeing what exactly is going on? And they still do it? Is that how it works? I'm asking you guys. You tell me.
that are going to spend, you know, boutique money on a product are doing their research and they're doing their homework.
Yes.
Okay.
And if they don't, if they have the money to buy it and they're not buying it, and they're buying other brands that are, dare I say, been around longer, more popular, I think they're thinking in a resale value. What's going to happen when I try to resell this?
Yeah,
Am I going to
right.
get my money back? Knaggs, even though you've been here for 10 years, you make amazing, beautiful works of art that are also playable. That's to quote Larry Mitchell. They're afraid that if they ever go to sell it, well, am I going to get the money I paid for it, or am I going to lose money? And you
Okay.
shouldn't look at that. In my opinion, although I'm a player, Ty's a player, Eric's a player. We play these things. We gig with these things. These are tools. We're not looking to sell these things. We're not looking to well, what's going to happen when I decide to sell it? Well, if it's a tool, you don't sell your hammer, right? You
Well,
don't sell your screwdriver.
Yeah.
It's like Peter, you said it earlier. You said guys that play, guys that actually go out and play, they get it. They when they get the guitar in their hand and they try it, experience it, they get it. I had a Knaggs. We talked to Eric. Eric talked about Candy, and I immediately had to have one simply based on the way in which he described not only the playing experience, but the sonic characteristics that the guitar had. I had to go out and find one, and I was just very lucky to find one right away.
Yeah, he found one. There was another one, and before I could buy it, it got sold.
That's what happened.
Well,
Number 10 and number 7.
Yeah. Well, we also guitar players, and as we all know, as guitar players, it's almost like with children. It's nobody wants to hear it, and it's hard to say, but most people do have favorite children. Okay. So there's also most people do have favorite guitars. Usually people have a number 1 and number 2 and number 3 and number 4. That is a fact.
Yeah, that's true.
So when you have 18 or 20 or 25, you may want to sell one of them, maybe 21 or 22 or 23 at some point. So there will be guitars sold, is my point. Guitars will be bought and guitars will be sold.
Yeah, and the whole
it's just a matter of, otherwise Reverb would have not existed and never would have sold for $575 million fucking dollars, right?
Yeah, very true.
After I bought my first Knaggs, I bought a Knaggs, and I was so blown away by it. And the other thing that I find unique about Knaggs too is how vested your dealer network is, and how well they represent your brand and the values of your brand. They clearly understand the product, but they understand the values. They understand.
It's because we were very careful whom we start working with, and there's a lot of thought going into that, and we want them to be in many ways sort of exclusive. We don't want to be in any store. We don't decide on whom they are by size or by revenue. We try to decide on whom they are that we're working with by whom they are and what they know and what they are capable of doing. We don't have that many dealers. I think we had, 20, 25, 28 in the United States, which is nothing compared to everybody else. But we like it that way. And we also want our dealers, especially the ones who have been working with us for a long time, to make some money with our instruments and to reap the benefits from believing in us and supporting us. That's very important to us too.
It's very funny. Twice in my lifetime in retail, because I worked in retail for a long time, have I seen this type of thing. The first time I saw it was when in the middle 90s, 95 through 99, I worked at Manny's Music in Manhattan. And GNL was the company. A small custom shop, if you will. Yeah, they are bolt-on guitars. But people would ask, well, why should I buy this when I could buy a Fender? And I said, well, all right. GNL is a very small custom shop. Everything is handmade. The guitar that you want to compare
It's
it to,
Leo's. Hey, it's Leo's company. I
Right.
hope you said that too.
yes, absolutely. But
That's kind of important.
you compare them to an American standard Fender Stratocaster, and the appointments on the GNL blow it away for maybe $100 more. Maybe $100 more.
Yeah, they're not much more expensive than
Right.
Strat.
And now it's happening again, where why should I buy a Knaggs over a Gibson Les Paul? Well, this, and this.
Yeah.
And you clearly play a custom shop Les Paul, and then you play a Knaggs, a Stevens, or a Kanai with humbuckers in it. And hell, I heard it the first time I played. I had a natural one here that I was selling for someone that I got to play for a while. And I had a custom shop Les Paul as well. And everything about the Knaggs sounded better than the Les Paul. The Les Paul sounded flubby, where the Knaggs sounded nice and tight and rich. And,
Yeah.
and I'm not selling guitars for you, nor do I want to sell guitars for you.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you how my ears heard it. And
Well,
I got pretty good ears.
Well, when I got my first Kanai, I sent Peter a message, and because I do have some very nice custom shop instruments by the G brand from the G family, as Peter said, and I sent him a photo and of the I bought a Doug Rappaport Kanai, and I set it up against a custom shop Les Paul, and I sent it to Peter, and I was like, wait a minute, here are the differences. What am I supposed to do with this Les Paul now? And he said, sell it and buy more Knaggs.
Yeah. Good answer. Good answer.
What else am I supposed to say?
I know, right?
No, but
you're absolutely right.
yeah, it's like, and look, I want to make one thing clear here, okay? It's guitars are very, very personal gems, okay? There's something that happens when you pick up a guitar that happens within a couple of minutes, seconds, sometimes maybe minutes, okay? I'm sure there's great Les Pauls out there. I haven't really played any in the last 20 years, to be honest with you. I really haven't. Not because I'm arrogant or anything like that, just didn't need or feel the need to pick one up. Okay, after having thousands in my hands before. So I'm not coming from that angle. I'm not saying what we do is so much better than anyone else's things or any of that. I'm not even coming from that end. I'm just coming from what I personally prefer, like what feels right to me, and try to implement and work that into what we are making as a company, what we are building as a company, having, being blessed with having, in my opinion, greatest builder of our time working with me. And that was the original vision when we started, okay? I knew who Joe was, and I think Joe knew who I was, and that was how it started.
Well,
It's fantastic. Those are big words right there.
Yeah,
they really are.
I want to use another car reference here because obviously I'm car obsessed, but I think it applies pretty well here, because I hear a lot of this. I hear in the guitar community, in the guitar world, I hear a lot of small boutique companies sort of having to answer or defend why they want to remain small and exclusive. And what I don't hear, I watch a lot of interviews with like Koenigsegg, Bugatti, and they never get asked, hey, how come you guys make 100 cars a year? You only sell them in Davos and Monaco. And so there's
Dubai.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's an understanding in the car community that, hey, Bugatti doesn't want to be Toyota. And they're not saying that Toyota cars are bad. That's not what they're saying. They're just saying that that's that thing, and this is another.
Yeah. It's a different business model, yes.
And what's funny is in the guitar community, I haven't seen people haven't caught up yet to that way of thinking. They're still thinking that, oh, everybody just wants to be Fender and Gibson, and if you're not Fender and Gibson, you're not selling. You know, there's people haven't caught up yet to the idea of like, no, there's like, you know, there's an exclusive boutique aura around something that's handmade and made by the guy whose name is on the headstock. There's something special about this.
Well, talking about made by the guy whose name is on the headstock. Okay, that's a good one. Let's just go there for a second. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the reality is there's no Joe Ibanez. Okay. There's no Mr. Ibanez. Okay. Companies called Hoshino. Ibanez is a name they made up. Not bashing them, just I remember when they first came out with their Silver series in the early 70s, which were Strat, Tele, and Les Paul copies, which were probably better at the time than
They were
the
better.
originals. Okay,
I'll tell you that they were.
Ibanez is a great company.
Yeah, they're good.
All the Japanese companies are great because they know what they're doing and they are really meticulous and their attention to detail is amazing. Okay, and as a German, I know what attention to detail means. The chaps are really good on that end. But what I'm talking about is more like whatever the brand is and whatever your approach is, it's coming, it's coming down to vision is a big one, how well you are able to design things and how well you are able to differentiate your design from somebody else's design, but still be appealing. Okay. Now, when you're looking at instruments and shapes and guitars and models, you would think by 2020 it's all been done. It's almost like in music. You would think by 2020 it's all been done. Okay. If you talk about classic rock, at the very latest, by the time Bad Company came around, you didn't really need to listen to anything else anymore after that.
That's right.
But then Queen, then Queen and other bands happened, and then Sting happened, and then you know what I mean? It's like it never stops. So there's always something that continues to make art and, make better art, make better craft. So it's a continuation of what happened before us and what happens after us. That maybe in 2040 there'll be some kids that make something that blows everyone's mind.
Right.
So it's totally possible.
It's cool.
The evolution.
And that goes for instruments, cars, music, anything really.
Anything that can be built.
Anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything can be made.
I mean, Peter and I talk about guitar amps all the time and how, man, that has changed. I mean, it's funny because like Peter and I talk about how like when he was coming up, when he was my age playing, amps had no gain. Like there was this roaring lead tone that everybody has now was really impossible.
That's why, going back to Candy, that's why all the pickup makers like Samo and Larry DiMarzio, especially those two were the first. Why they came up, like, anybody remember the XN2?
Oh yeah.
Or DiMarzio's Super Distortion?
They were just
because you had a Plexi Marshall and fucking thing, you had to crank it up to get any gain out of it, and that's why everybody started winding 14, 15, 16K pickups.
Right.
That's right.
Okay.
Right. Because
it's the opposite now. If you use a 14, 15, 16, 17K output pickup and play it into a Soldano or Friedman or a Trinity, it sounds like a transistor radio.
Right.
Okay.
It's very funny.
So back in our day, we had to use boosters or whatever it was, or tape delays with preamp tubes as preamps to get any gain out of these things until the 2203 and 2204 Marshall came around.
Yep.
Right. It's funny to see like the response today to the pickup launch because everybody in the comp on all the different platforms is like, I can't believe these are only 7.5K output, because they hear the sound and it's like, and it's
Yeah.
like it's because that's the way to get the tone. Because if I were playing with those amp settings with a 24K output pickup, it would be completely unintelligible.
Yeah.
Push. There'd be no.
Yeah, it would be 800. It would be 800 hertz to 1.3 kilohertz, and it would sound like freaking through a tunnel or a telephone or both at the same time.
It's very true. And also, go ahead, Ty.
Yeah, Eric, you beat me to the transition because when we were having a conversation, when you, Dave, and I were having a conversation about candy, and we were really probing you with questions. Okay, well, what is it specifically? And you said something that was very profound. You said, I'm not sure what's going on with these pickups, but the way all of this is working together, there's something really special going on. And you were talking about the amount of gain that you play with and how that articulation is extremely important to you. And these pickups that were in your candy were delivering that for you. And now it's October 29th. It's a big release day for you and Seymour Duncan. Tell us about these signature pickups.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was cool. It was like all these parties came together to make this thing happen. So, like everybody, we all needed each other to make this end result. Because so basically, I'll give you the real abridged version. So I'm in Australia and down there on tour, and I had been with Knaggs at this point for already like 2.5 years. So I had I think on that tour I brought my Cobra, and I think my satin black guitar. I think those are the two I brought for that tour.
That's correct.
Yeah, Peter remembers details. And so I had those two guitars, and I was doing my tour. It was going great, and we had a show in Melbourne. But I got in the car on the way to the show, a guy named Paul Demek, who's lived in Melbourne. He had tickets for the Melbourne show. Messaged me, says, "Hey, not sure if this is going to reach you in time, but I'm a collector. I live in Melbourne, and I have a bunch of old vintage, Fender and Gibsons that, I'd love for you to just play, check them out. Maybe we get some videos." And I said, "Yeah, let's just like meet at a music store or something in the city before the gigs." We had hours to kill, and so we met at this place called Eastgate Music, which was actually it's a really high-end music store in
Marcelo.
Oh, that's right. He knows Marcelo. So it's a really high-end store. It's a really good store. So we got in there, and everybody's just kind of milling around. It was a real quiet afternoon, and this guy Paul shows up with a couple of cool guitars. He had like I think a 52 Blackguard Telly or Esquire. I'm not real knowledgeable on that era, but
one pickup or two pickups?
One pickup.
Esquire,
yeah. So and then he says, "Yeah, that one's cool." He says, "But I got the real thing is in the trunk." So he grabs the 1960 Candy, and original Lifton case, everything original. And we plugged it into my rig, and it was cool because now the guitar itself was a little heavy for my taste. There were a couple of things about it. Like I said earlier, it's like getting behind the driver's seat of a 65 Mustang in 2020. You go, wow, this is historically cool, but it's not like my car. It's so there were a couple of like clunky things about the guitar, but it was a 1960 burst. It was like badass. It's still cool. You still hold it and you go, wow, there's something cool here. So we're playing it and I'm playing it, and then people start coming in and getting videos, and then it almost turned into a clinic because then it became we were there like all afternoon. So I spent a lot of hours with this guitar that I wasn't expecting to. And basically what I took away from it was, okay, the coolest thing about this guitar actually is just the way the pickups kind of respond, like how they're balanced between the neck and the bridge, and how like squawky they were with like sort of the Billy Gibbons kind of, pinch harmonics. And most Les Pauls that I've played, I found them to be the opposite. Like they were almost too flubby, too dark. But these were like really bright and chimey, almost a little P90 kind of essence about them. So everybody left the room, and we were all packing up. And this Paul guy grabs one of my Knaggs. I think he grabbed the Cobra off the stand, and he's just kind of noodling with it unplugged while I'm packing up the gear. And he looks at me and he goes, dude, the neck on this Knaggs, man. He had never played a Knaggs before. He was like a Fender Gibson, kind of fanboy guy. And he had never played any boutique guitars really. And he picks up the Cobra and he's like, this neck is amazing, man. And I said, yeah, man, are you not familiar with Knaggs? And he said, well, I know of them, but I've never played one. And he couldn't put it down. He's like, I'm trying to pack up, and he keeps playing my Cobra, and to the point where I actually said, hey, I gotta take it from you. I gotta go. So he came to the show, and then after the gig at the merch table, we were just talking, and he goes, man, I gotta get a Knaggs, man. I gotta get one of those Knaggs. And he says something like, do they do relics or anything like that? And I think at that point, you guys hadn't done a whole lot of relics. So the idea just kind of popped into my head of like,
It was we hadn't done any relics.
oh, okay, you hadn't done any, right? So,
No.
and I think I told him, yeah, they don't really do relic guitars. But then this idea popped into my head, just driving around on that tour of like, maybe there's some way to combine my relationship with Knaggs and the elements of this candy guitar that I liked. So I contacted this Paul guy a few days later, and I said, hey, here's kind of what I'm thinking. Is this something that you'd be up for? And he was like, yeah, it sounds cool. So then I messaged Peter, kind of explained a little bit, and he was like, well, let me think about it. Let's talk to Joe. And he said what he said earlier of like, I don't really want to, promote other companies and things. And, I was like, hey, all good. It's just an idea. If it happens, cool. If not, whatever. So then we ended up doing these guitars in a really classy way. We showed respect to a historical guitar, but we totally did it as a modern, beast. But the last little element, the last little thing, and this gets back to your question, the last little thing that happened was we were about to like do these guitars. And then I think I called Peter or something, and I was like, hey, you know what? We haven't talked about what we're going to put in them yet, pickup wise. And there's all these great pickups out there. And we were thinking like, okay, should we pull from a brand that we like, or should we, and then we just decided like, let's just get a brand new pickup made for these guitars. And I went back to Paul, the owner of Candy, and I said, hey, if you're comfortable with this, could you take apart the guitar and give me the readings and give me the specs and tell me, what kind of were they Alnico 1, 2, 3, 5? What were the readings? And he was kind enough to do that. And he sent us all the information. We forwarded it over to MJ, and she sent Peter and Joe some sets, and we put them in the guitar, and it was like a huge hit within the Knaggs community before it was released aftermarket.
So, Eric, would you mind if I give you the technical reasons why you liked the original 1960 Burst so much?
Yeah, sure.
All right. 1957, 58, and 59, all Les Pauls, had a long neck tenon that went underneath the pickup deep into the body, which helped, and the sides of the neck, since they were bigger, that gave it a more bass response, not as bright, very, less bright sound. In 1960, Gibson decided to go with a smaller neck tenon, so it didn't go all the way into the guitar like it used to, and they decided to do a very thin profile neck. Now those two things alone, without the pickups, are going to make the guitar brighter sounding. Right. So that's why a lot of people that play an original 1960 guitar is like, oh my God, this is the golden era year of the guitar. Most people have not played 60s, have played 59s if they have a vintage one. Right. So they're like, all right, this is the best, until they play a 60, and then it's like, the game is over. You know, so.
Because, with the way I set up my amps, I run things dark with a lot of gain. And so a guitar that's already kind of dark and gainy would almost be too much of a good thing. So, so kind of what you're saying, like, the reason why the Candy guitar stuck with me as had a cool vibe about it was probably because it was on the brighter side, and it was it did have those upper mids. Mm-hmm. And that's what I stress, when it comes back to the pickups and what we're doing now with Duncan with the pickups this is what I stressed in my launch video so clearly was these are a great pickup for people that have modern amps and modern pedal boards, because you don't have to worry. Like, you can gob on the gain and you're not going to lose clarity. Like, it's a great modern pickup, which when people hear that, they go, wait a minute, aren't modern pickups supposed to be like 16, 18K? And I'm trying to turn that idea on its side. I'm trying to say, no, a great modern pickup is actually clear, articulate, and underwound, so that way your amp can do the work. You know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just want to say Tone Talk is here. Hey, Mark. He says, hey, guys, big fan of Knaggs. Please make me a lefty Steve Stevens. And I want to digress. Before we go into that, I want to digress. You guys were talking about the X2N earlier. And I'm going to show this guitar only because it was Larry Mitchell's guitar throughout the 90s. It was his main guitar. And it may have the prototype X2N in it.
Very cool.
Because I know that when Larry first started with DiMarzio, he was looking for a very high output pickup, and they made this for him. Mm-hmm. And I think that is the prototype.
Wow.
And Peter, this is what I was talking about with in regards to Larry Mitchell.
Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. This was
beautiful.
He gave me this back in 2008. I happened to be in a hospital. This is a longer story than this, but I teched for him for a long time, and then I was a member of his band for a while. And when I was in the hospital and coming out, he gave me this guitar as a healing gift.
Wow.
So
yeah, Larry's such a great soul, man.
Yeah. So
he really is. Hey guys, if there's anything else that you need to know from me, I would like to recuse myself, as they call it today.
Sure, absolutely.
Because I'm a little wacky. I've been at it since 4:30 a.m., so I need to take some little nap.
Absolutely.
But Peter, if there's anything else, there was one question earlier from that SSC lefty.
Yes.
Would like to answer that. We're not building any lefties for now. Joe just has asked me and Michael and everyone else to refrain from additional programming and building of new things for now, because we otherwise we get overwhelmed, and we want to keep our current build and lead times sort of like reasonable instead of having to go out 6, 8, 10, 12, 15 months to make something that, that's something extra. So for the moment, we don't do lefties. That may change in the future, but for now, I'm sorry, we can't.
Understood.
Yeah. Thank you.
Is there anything else?
Peter, thanks so much for the time. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome.
Yep.
Thank you for having me, and I appreciate it. And have some fun with Eric, and ask him about how it all started. It all started in July 2017, if I remember correctly.
Amber Burst Severn X.
Yeah, some friend of ours who calls himself Naughty Rock. His real name is Sam. Yep. He's actually from Annapolis, but moved to Florida. He sent me a video of Eric playing at the Hagerstown, Maryland Blues Festival in June 2017.
Wow.
And so I watched this video at my computer, and I see this guy playing the Severn X in Amber Burst, 3-piece band. And it just blew me away. It just fucking blew me away. 45 minutes of constant blow me away. How can somebody solo that long without it being boring? Okay.
Right.
No, without it being boring. Okay.
Exactly.
That's the point.
Yeah. I feel the same way about Eric.
And sing and conduct the band and all that. So
great.
After I saw that, I sent him a message and said, "Hey, thank you so much for playing one of our guitars." And that's how our relationship and journey started.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit funny, just because I was always taught growing up that you never cold call for endorsements, or what well, in modern terms, send somebody a Facebook message and say, hey, can I get some free shit? You know, like I was.
Well, that's not what happened either.
No,
anyway,
that's what I'm saying. Like,
okay,
I always taught that, you know, as
I get like 25 of those a day.
Exactly. So I had
a day.
Oh, I'm not surprised. So all the older guys was coming up. They were like, "Hey, kid, that's not how it works. You got, you know." So basically, what happened was I was, you know, seeing on Facebook and Instagram, like basically all the cool players were playing these Knaggs guitars. Now, I didn't know Joe Knaggs. I didn't know Peter Wolf yet. I didn't know any names. I didn't even know that it was Joe Knaggs. I saw the headstock. I saw a few friends of mine playing them. I saw that all the guys playing them were like really good. You know what I mean? It was like a brand that the good players flocked to. And I was like, well, shit, I want to be part of this club, man, you know? And at that time, you know, I was touring a lot. Things were going good. I had some money, and I said, you know what? I'm just going to buy one. I'm not going to try to like sit around and wait and like try to cozy up to this company and get them to know me. I just went on Reverb like every other Joe, and I just paid full price. I bought one. And the irony of the story that I always tell people was funny is it was only like 2 weeks later, actually, that we got connected. But I don't say that. I don't mean that I regret buying the guitar. I just mean that it was funny timing because we ended up working together very shortly after I bought it.
Well, and next time I'm coming back on the show, I'll tell you the second part of the Eric story, because that's the second part of the Eric story is the actually funny part.
Yeah, that's awesome, and we'd love to have you on.
And it involves the company Joe and I were working for before. So that's the funny part. I wanna tell you at some point.
Wait, I'm actually not sure what you're actually talking about. What do you?
When you got approached by them if you wanted to be part of the launch of the Silver Sky.
God, Peter, I legitimately forgot about that. I blocked that out. I totally forgot about that. You're right. I still have those emails somewhere. Yeah. Oh my God. Totally forgot.
Well, we'll keep that for next time.
Perfect. Yeah, and I'll get a hold of you and get another date for you as well.
Sounds good, man.
Thank you so much, Peter.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Either. Sorry, I have to cut it a bit short. Yes.
There's one more question. There really is. Do you do stainless steel frets? Pros and cons, and why not if you don't?
We don't. We don't like the sound of them. They sound dead.
Fair enough.
There you go.
Joe does not want to use stainless steel, and I totally agree with him. We use Cheska nickel, silver, or we use for the 7X and some other builds, we use EVO frets, which are bronze gold alloy. That sounds really good. Holds longer, but doesn't have the pling sound that stainless steel, in our opinion, has. We all bless everybody who uses them and is happy, but we don't like the sound of it.
Thank you so much.
Enough.
There's the answer.
Alrighty.
All right.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Peter.
Nice gentlemen. Have a good one.
I'll call you next
too.
week.
Sounds good, man.
All right.
Bye.
Take care.
Good night.
Good night.
Eric, a few more questions about this pickup. Once again, congratulations.
Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You said something in the video that you did for Seymour Duncan, and for all of you there, we're going to put a link in the description to this video that Eric shot, because look, I mean, not only are the pickups sound amazing, but the playing is just, next level. And
it came out good. I'm really happy with that video. They edited it really well. It was really nice.
It's very nice. You said something in that made it really simple. You said, the heartbeat of your tone is in the pickups, and if you like what you're hearing, then you too can have a piece of my tone. And that was very important for you in this project, right? Making these pickups available and accessible, and really getting them right.
Yeah, there were a couple things that happened during this process. Like, I learned a lot about pickups. Well, I shouldn't even say a lot. I learned basically everything about pickups during this process, because I had never really cared so much before about, ohm readings or, which conductors were used and whether it was Alnico 2 or 5 or 3. It was always, for me, it was always like, I don't know, does it sound good? Like I was real backwoods about it. I had no knowledge of what was really under the hood until I started working with Seymour Duncan on this project. So I learned a lot in the process. And what I learned is what I like. I found out what it is that I like. And I found out that, well, the way I set up my rig and the way a lot of guys are setting up their rig now, like this pickup is very good for the times we're in, because every amp now, basically, unless it's a clone of a 60s Fender or something, every modern amp has like a gain channel, which has seemingly infinite amounts of gain. So nobody's struggling to get gain in 2020. Whether you have a pedal doing it or an amp, it's not hard to get gain anymore. So what I learned in this process was in modern applications, you're actually going to have a sweeter mid-range if you just cool off the pickups a little bit and pull the pickups back and let the power section of the amp, and even the preamp, to be honest, get you that saturation, but don't smother the front ends with a pickup that's just overly hot, because pickups that are overly hot, when you roll the volume knob down on them, they don't have that sensitivity. It's just like the pedal's always to the metal, and there's no, like, if you listen on that last record I did, Grandview Drive, there's a lot of rhythm tracks where I don't do an edit where I cut in for a clean. I actually just roll the volume down in the middle of the rhythm take for my clean, and then roll it back up. Very much like the way Ed would do, the way Van Halen would do it. Like his rhythm takes were one performance. It wasn't like he would cut in and do a clean sound and then have it was all one performance. So where the pickups come into that is, if you have pickups that are not dynamic, if they're just like screaming at you all the time, you'll never be able to get those dynamics, And so basically what I learned in this process was, okay, the sound that I like is these very low output Alnico 3s. And that's what we're selling people. And, people might hear that and go, because I've heard, people sometimes criticize, like, they'll say, well, to really get Eric's tone, you got to have all of it. You got to have the Knaggs and the Mezzabarba and the cable he uses, and then the food he ate that day, all this stuff. And I respect that, and I'm flattered by that. But I think that, whether you're playing a Friedman, whether you're playing a Bogner, whether you're playing a Line 6, whether you're playing a Bugera, whether you're playing a Mezzabarba, if your amp has a gain channel, if you buy these pickups, it's going to sweeten your overdrive sound no matter what amp you're playing, So it's kind of almost like a no-fail thing, it's not going to hurt.
Mm-hmm. I think that's an important point, right? They're designed for today, because so much gear is marketed to us with a vintage character, right? The PAF clone, the Plexi like, and so much is, but it is 2020. It isn't. We're not living in the 60s and 70s, and gear has changed and platforms have changed.
Totally.
And the way in which we're using the gear has changed. And I think that's an important distinction. I mean, certainly the quality of the guitar that they're in, plays a role. But I loved how you really took care of that in the promotional material, and said, hey, listen, you can take these, and this is a piece of what I have to offer you, and they can sound like this. And as a user of these Candy pickups, they do go from Billy Gibbons to Eric Steckel and everything in between. I mean, there's a lot, and they sound so good in a mix. I play with a lot of gigs with another guitar player who also has some Knaggs guitars, and most recently Knaggs that are loaded with Candy. And the character of his cut is so much different than mine, but still sounds so awesome.
Yeah, and I can
in the
tell
mix.
Yeah, what you said about a mix, that's crucial because, and I realized that too, because when how do I explain this in a concise way? So when I recorded Grandview Drive, I was mainly using, because that album was actually recorded, even though the album came out in May of this year, that album was recorded last year. That was a 2019 actual like tracking session. And the reason why it took forever to come out was because of label things and COVID and everything going on in the early part of 2020. But because it was recorded last year, I didn't have the Candy pickups yet. So that album, there wasn't any Candy pickups on that album, just by sheer happenstance, because it just wasn't a creation yet. So fast forward to now, I re-recorded for the Duncan promo material. I re-recorded some of the solos from Grandview Drive for Duncan to have to use on their YouTube channel and things. And so now I'm hearing what the album would have sounded like if I was using Candy. And it's so obvious. It's like, man, these sit even better. I mean, I'm happy with Grandview Drive. I'm not dissing my own album, but
It's an amazing record.
It is.
yeah, I'm not like trying to crap on it. I'm just saying that in hindsight, man, if I would have had these Candy pickups for that album, the solos, they sit on top of the rhythm better with the Candy pickups than with the Saturday Night Specials that were in all my guitars before. So yeah,
Which are great pickups. I mean, the Saturday Nights are great pickups. Saturday
Nights to me are like, if somebody's like, look, I just want like a really solid PAF that's, not low wow. I mean, they're pretty hot, a good sort of, it's a great pickup. It's a great pickup. But what I hear, the difference I hear between those and mine, and I hate for this to sound like a marketing thing, because it really isn't, because I've owned both and I love them both. Mine are, they sound more like something. They sound more like a specific thing, like I'm going for something. Whereas the Saturday Nights sound like they could make everyone happy. You see what I mean?
Yeah,
like the Saturday Nights don't offend anyone. They're just like, these are a really good, dependable pickup that always kicks ass. Whereas the Candies, I mean, it's a very specific tone. And if you're someone who likes my tone, you're going to go out and buy them. If you're someone who doesn't like my tone, well, then spare yourself, because, when you buy them, that's what it's going to sound like,
Right. Well, the Candy pickups, like you said, the Saturday Night Specials, I'm not going to say they're a dime a dozen. They're just a really good pickup. It's just a really good pickup. You want a baseline of what a good pickup sound like, get that pickup.
100%.
You want a pickup that has a sound of its own, very airy, very light, maybe light in the loafers with an amp that doesn't have high gain, but sounds perfect in the mix with a high gain amp. You get the Candy pickups, because that is just what they are.
Yeah, well said.
They make the player sound. Do I use this word? They make the player sound better. I feel like that with that, because it is a lower wound pickup, it does make you play a bit differently.
It does.
It changes the way in which you're attacking the string. It changes the way you hear that attack and that recoil. It does it. And to your point, Eric, if you're playing through, the first time I plugged this into a Friedman, I was like, oh my God, that's it.
Yeah.
It really was an experience, and I know that the pickups had played an important role in that.
I think this was like, okay, what is it now? It's October 29th. So I think this was like back in August. I stopped by and visited all the Knaggs guys in Maryland, and we actually did one day at the shop. We spent a good, 4 or 5 hours. We actually did a legitimate pickup shootout, and we took my black guitar, which was a good. Mm-hmm. We didn't want to use Candy because Candy already has Candies in it, so we just left that alone. But we took my black guitar and we just used that as like the tester, and we didn't touch anything on the amp. The amp was like, we set it and forget it. And we were trying out all these different pickups, all different Seymours, bare knuckles, of course, my Candies, all different things. And what everybody in the room, so this is Me, Peter, Joe Knaggs, Lucas, all the guys that work in the shipping department, like the whole Knaggs crew, they all were like, okay, all these other pickups sound great, but these candy pickups sound like something. They sound like it's a tone that was like a clear, somebody was going for something when they made these.
Well, I'll tell you what it is.
The big thing, you know.
I'll tell you what it is. The candy pickups, because they're so low, they're underwound. They're underwound.
They are, yeah.
They allow the wood of the guitar. You hear the wood of the guitar instead of the electronics and the metal of the guitar on other pickups, because at that point, the output of the pickup allows you to hear the actual wood.
Right.
It's just, that's what it is. That's the sound. It's the wood of the guitar.
Exactly. And for folks that do like chicken picking and like stuff where you're playing with, you're using your right hand, you're using the texture of your right hand a lot. These pickups are really going to showcase this because they have, like you said, they have a lot of that sparkly air on top. So if you're a player who has a lot of texture in your rhythm in your right hand, these pickups are going to really push that out in the mix more. You know, these pickups don't compress at all. Yeah. Now, some folks might hear that and go, well, damn, I got to practice then. Like, because it is that kind of pickup. These pickups don't compress. I mean, they do not compress.
They're very open.
They're very extremely open. Which is why if you have a high gain amp that's compressed, it's a great match.
It's a great match.
If you're a player who's playing a Tweed Twin, an 80-watt Tweed Twin with no pedals, and you stick the candy set in your guitar, it'll sound bitchin', but you better be on your game because every little clink and pop is going to be coming out of the speaker.
It's going to make you honest for sure. I'm glad you brought up the textural piece of it too, because I have found that because I'm a hybrid picker.
Yeah.
And I have found that the candy pickups are very balanced, you know, when I'm using the pick and I'm pulling with my middle finger. Yeah. It's very level. You don't get these unbalanced jumps.
Right. No spikes, no peaks.
None. And I'm glad you mentioned that. And that neck pickup, for a guy that loves to use the neck pickup above the 12th fret, that neck pickup is money. Just nice and warm.
As good as the neck pickup is, try this. Try going to the bridge and rolling the tone all the way off. It is instant. People always say, "Oh, woman tone." Yeah. People that turn around all the time. Man, it sounds exactly like the woman tone. If you put the tone all the way to 0 on the candy bridge pickup with the volume all the way up, you know, with a little bit of gain.
It makes sense because and that was low output, exactly. Underwound, exactly. And that's what that pickup sounds like, even in a thin-bodied SG.
Right. And when we were doing these pickups and marketing these and getting them ready for sale and you know, having all these meetings with the Duncan team, we were researching like other companies that are making PAF clones and like what their, you know, which Alnico wire they were using, what their readings were. And most, like the standard, if you just Googled PAF clone and hit enter, you're going to get a lot of pickups that are Alnico 2 around 8.2K. That's like the standard PAF clone is an Alnico 2 around 8.2 to 8.5K. So this is an Alnico 3 at 7.5. So when people comment on stuff and say, "Oh, another PAF clone," not really. This is actually a little bit of a departure from your typical PAF clone on the internet. This is a little bit outside of the mainstream, you know.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: now that your pickup has come out, I'm even though it's the candy, I'm considering your pickup.
Yep.
Are you going to change the pickups in your other guitars and put those in?
Already done.
Every one of them has candies in it.
Not every single one, but every one that I had with me at the Knaggs factory back in August.
Nice.
So I didn't have my Cobra there with me, and I didn't have my very first Sunflower, but everything else. Yeah, everything else is candy outfitted now. So next time I visit them, I'll just bring whatever guitars remain that don't have them and have them install them for me.
Eric, are the pickups are they shipping yet? I know that the announcement was today. When do they ship? Are they shipping too?
Yeah, so so they're up on the Seymour Duncan custom shop, and what's cool about the custom, and this is actually, I didn't even know this, and it's my pickup, and I didn't even know this, but they're offering every single option that they offer for every Seymour Duncan pickup is available in the candies. So that means any combination you can think of except for double cream. The only reason is because DiMarzio holds the patent.
Yeah, they patent that.
But everything else, they have aged, light aged, heavy aged, gold, nickel, no covers, black bobbins, chrome bobbins, gold. I mean, it's like every option you can get: long wire, short wire, 4-conductor, I mean, it's every option, and it's on this drop down menu. So anybody goes to my website or Instagram, whatever, there's a link, takes you to the page. You can order a neck, a bridge, or a set. And then there's all these options, and then it just says build your pickup, and then
that's pretty badass that you can split the coils in a candy pickup. Imagine how that sounds as a single coil.
Yeah, it's cool, man. It's cool that they're doing. I didn't know they were doing the coil split versions, the 4-conductor versions. So that's cool. There were some things that were a surprise to me. We didn't even discuss, So it's cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing, and we can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing this with you today. I mean, it's a huge day, and
yeah,
I'm just so happy that, and I know my friends are very happy that I can stop talking about these cool pickups that are in my guitar that they can't get yet, and that they can now go get them.
Yeah, I hope people dig them. What I'll say is, I know there probably will be some folks who, there's probably going to be two. There's always, whenever you have a signature, whenever an artist has a signature product, there's always the two issues that arise. The first issue is people that buy something expecting to sound like the artist by purchasing the product. And then when they don't, they get frustrated. And in the second camp would be folks that maybe don't have a high gain amp, like folks that maybe are not as educated on gear, and they might say, "Oh, I want Eric's tone," and they buy the pickups, but they have like a Fender Twin or something,
a gorilla amp,
or something. But besides those two camps, I mean, I think it's going to be very, very widely, widely accepted.
And I like the idea of these pickups for these purists, because I love that sound, that early ZZ Top thing, with that Les Paul through that Fender, brown tweed. And I mean I love that tone.
Oh, yeah.
These pickups are perfect for that. And I mean, to your earlier point, if you're going to clean, when you clean them up, they get really honest. But that's a good thing, right? I mean, that makes us work to be better players.
Yeah. What these pickups do well is, like, if you're a player that you live on the volume knob, your hand is always reaching for the volume knob on your guitar, and it's part of your skill set, like the volume knob.
Yep.
And you're gonna love these because they're actually gonna respond. Like I've had people hand me guitars, and they'll have like some super distortion pickups in them or whatever. You roll the volume down, and all it does is go off. It's just. It's either
no
off,
taper. Yeah.
There's no actual, and I love, you listen to like Van Halen 1, and you listen to like when he would roll up the gain, like those magical sort of moments.
They bloomed.
Yeah, exactly. And these crazy output pickups just can't give you that. It's just not possible. So for folks that like that thing, this is definitely up your alley.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's awesome. I can't wait to hear a set of them myself. I can't wait to put a set in a guitar.
Right. Thank you.
Dave, you said a couple of months ago that you wish you could just grab a set and put them in a guitar, and
I can
now
tomorrow.
you can.
I can tomorrow.
Yeah.
In fact, a couple of my local stores may actually have them tomorrow, so I may go visiting a store or two.
Well, I can tell you this: here's the way it works with Duncan. It's kind of an insider sort of trade secret, but pickups that originate in the custom shop remain in the custom shop for 12 months. So what happens is like this is only going to be available on the Seymour Duncan website for the first year.
Okay.
It wouldn't be brick and mortar, or I shouldn't even say brick and mortar. It wouldn't even be like, you know, the big Sweetwater Guitar Center. That wouldn't happen till at the earliest 2022.
Okay.
Cool.
Just because what happens is like if you're a huge name, if you're Slash or Joe Perry, they don't even start you in the custom shop. They just start you they'll start you in the regular shop and make like 10,000 pickups.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but if you're I shouldn't say smaller name, because if you look at the custom shop, the names are, I memorized it because I looked at it today. It's Bonamassa, Gibbons, Hendrix, Alex Skolnick, myself, and Lemmy. Those are the current offerings in the custom shop. So it's not like they're, you know, chump names. It's
Mm-hmm.
just
Good. That's good company, Eric.
You're in good company.
But if you
absolutely.
look at what the pickups are they're selling, they're the more expensive. Like the Bonamassa pickups they're not like a $200 set of pickups. They're a $400 set of pickups, like a specific. So what they do, the way Duncan works, is they say, okay, if we're starting out with a fairly expensive build, let's see how it does for a year in the custom shop before we move it into our, you know,
Production. Yeah.
So for the first year, it's going to be just a custom shop pickup. But,
Nice.
yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
I'm going to try to buy a set anyway.
Oh, great. Thank you.
And so is Ben Coons. He's gonna try a set as well in the
Yeah.
chat.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I mean, so far the website's working because people are sending me their screenshots of their order completed, you know, so the site's working. It's up and running good. So
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Well, Eric, we need to get you on for a full date by yourself. I know you just did a full show with us, but you know, we need to get you on a date where you're not sharing. So I'll talk to you in the next week or so as well, and try to get you back on the calendar.
works for me.
Whatever works for you is exactly right. So.
And all of you in the chat tonight, and all of you watching this in rewind, since Eric's last visit with us, Grandview Drive is out. An amazing record, amazing guitar playing.
Thank you.
Go and listen to that record.
That one, it's everywhere. Any place somebody would buy music, it's there. Amazon, iTunes, Google, Apple Music, Spot. It's everywhere. So it's available, and we're actually going to start. I think I mentioned this to you guys when we were off air, but I'll say it now that we're on air. Since there's no touring at the moment, I'm actually going to start already working on the next record. Even though Grandview Drive is still pretty brand new and has a lot of life left in it, I'm going to hit the studio next month and just get a few tracks down and see where they go. So.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
You know, a couple of weeks ago on this show, we were talking about songwriting, and we were talking about the way in which you put things together and put guitar parts together on songs. This record is a great example of how all of those things come together really well.
Oh, thanks.
So, yeah.
And I'm really like, I'm really old school, man. Like, I don't even have any home recording, gear. Like, how I write how I make demos is I have my iPhone, and I'll put it on voice memo, and I'll just hit the red button, and I'll record sometimes 50 voice memos in one night, and not 50 different songs. Sometimes it'll be one song with 50 different arrangements. And then what I do is I'll get in my car, hook it up to the USB, and I'll listen to all of them while driving, and I'll see which arrangement, flows past me while I'm driving the best. Like I remember there's a song on Grandview Drive called Promised Land. And I remember, I actually vividly remember driving around listening to iPhone memos of that song in different arrangements, trying to see which one offended me the least.
That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, like it's a weird thing to say about your own work, but what I mean by it is let's say Promised Land version 1, maybe it had 2 bridges and then a chorus, but while I'm driving, I'm like, oh, that annoys me. And then I go to the next version and it has the bridge before the chorus or what, I don't know. And I go, oh, that felt good. So that's how I do it. I just drive around listening to these really low quality, like fucking iPhone recordings. And I just, whatever feels good in the car, that's the version I send to my drummer. And that's the version that we end up recording.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's so cool. You know, Ben Coons just posted an Amazon link to Eric's record. It's called Grandview Drive. Click that link, purchase his record, put it in your phone, play it in the car. It's a fun listen.
Yeah, and see if that what? How did you say it just now? Yeah, if it bothers you. See if it offends you. See if that record offends you, because I doubt it will.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because that record, a lot of people have wrote me saying that they work out to that record. That it's
amazing.
A good workout record because it's fair. There's a couple of really, really heavy riffs, you know, and
high performance.
A lot of adrenaline. Yeah, there's a section. The song at the end of the record is called Solid Ground, and there's a slight story about that. That was actually going to open the record, and I was insistent. I was like, we got to open the record with Solid Ground. It has to start off, and it's a long song. It's like 6 minutes, and it has a fade out, and it has a long solo, and everybody around me, everybody was fighting me on that. They're like, why would you? It has to close the album. It has to close the album, and I finally gave in and said, you know, you guys are right. It should close the album. And I'm glad I listened, because the section at the end of that song, the outro solo, what happened when we were recording that was the drummer that I work with, he's a great rock drummer, amazing rock and metal drummer. And he was taught by Steve Smith from Journey.
Sure.
So he's the chops guy, chops for days, you know.
Wow.
But he has a big background in like tribal drumming, you know, and African drumming. And so he gets into this like African sort of tribal thing on the toms, on the floor tom at the end of Solid Ground. And what was funny was he's behind the glass in the live room, and I'm in the control room, and the engineer is sitting there. And while I'm playing Solid Ground, you know, while I'm playing it, this guy's doing all this tribal shit, and it's killer. And I'm looking at the engineer, and I'm cracking up laughing while I'm playing. So if you listen to maybe the last 15 seconds, kind of when it starts to fade out, you hear that the drummer is basically soloing, and I'm just kind of keeping the groove. And that's because I was just trying not to like break. I was trying not to laugh, because the guy was just going crazy, man. He was just doing all this African tribal shit, and it was killer. It was awesome.
Oh, that's cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I'll re-listen to that.
Couple of comments in the chat. Brian Spalding, who's an amazing guitar player himself, says, driving and recording ideas is a great way to create songs. I do my best stuff in 2-hour traffic.
Yeah, totally. There's something about speaking in a car.
Thunder Falcon asked if he'll get a speeding ticket while listening to it. You definitely will get a speeding ticket while listening to it.
Yeah, especially Solid Ground. That song, man, that song is the end. Like I said, that part we were just talking about where he goes into the tribal drums and the organ is like, it's funny. The end of that song, everything is maxed out. The organ is at the top register screaming. The drummer is doing tribal shit with double kick. The guitar is all the way up. The bass is it's the adrenaline at that moment is so intense that if you're not paying attention, you'll probably run a red light or something. It's a very crazy moment of the album. My favorite moment of the whole album, actually.
Cool.
Guitar
so Man 45 says, "Well, the first tune sounds good so far."
Yeah, so he's already.
He must be listening to it right now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's "Take My Love to Town." That song, that riff is the first time I've ever written a song. So, I got all these stories for you. If your people don't mind hearing them.
Not at all.
This is awesome.
Yeah. So "Take My Love to Town." So I wrote that riff. It's like and it's I didn't know at the time, because I'm bad with time signatures and like theory and stuff like that. I know what I like to hear, but I don't know what it is I'm doing technically. So I write this riff and I send it to my drummer, and that guy, and he responds and he goes, "Hey, that's a great riff, man." He goes, "Did you know that you basically sent me a New Orleans second line drum? This is a New Orleans second line groove."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, well, the snare is on the 2. So it's boom, ba. And he's like, did you intend to do that, or am I hearing it wrong? And I said, Don, I'm hearing it however you want to play it, man. Like I said, I don't know. I said, I'm a guitarist, so I wrote the riff. So he comes into the studio and he says, okay, I'm going to play the bell of the ride as like quarter notes, but I'll play the snare on the 2. So 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, which is straight out of a New Orleans parade with the, you know. So that song to me is like if Eddie Van Halen wrote a riff while renting an apartment in New Orleans or something. You know, that's how I see that one. So.
That's great. That's the 3rd Van Halen reference tonight.
Yeah.
R.I.P.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we're all being very reflective at this time.
Oh yeah, yeah, no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's my and I was saying this well before he passed. I mean, he's my top 3. When people ask me who are your top 3, it's Gary Moore, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Eddie Van Halen.
That's not a bad top 3 right there.
Yep.
No, it
Not
isn't.
bad at all. I think we could probably all say that.
Yeah.
It's
maybe in different order.
Oh yeah.
For each individual, but
yeah.
man, that's a great order. That's a great order right there too.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
One of the songs that I'm going to record for the next album is going to be sort of a. It's not meant to be like a tribute to Eddie, but it's like it's going to be in that sort of Ice Cream Man kind of like Hot for Teacher, like double kick boogie thing, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's going to be like, you know, tuned down real low, like probably drop C or something. There's a song on their 2012 record. It's called Stay Frosty.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah, I know it.
And we're going to do something. We're going to do like a version, a play on that a little bit.
That's basically Ice Cream Man Part 2.
It's Ice Cream Man, just a little heavier, slightly heavier.
Sure.
But yeah, we're going to do something like that. And the next album is going to be a lot of drop tune stuff.
So let me ask you this hypothetical.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to plant, not even a hypothetical. I'm going to plant the seed in your head.
Yep.
An Eric Steckel Kanai with a Floyd Rose.
Oh, yeah. Well, here's the thing. This is the irony of that. A lot of people who play like me, have a similar playing style, or are fans of mine, would love that. But this guy right here, I hate Floyd's, man.
Why?
I just find them to be a royal pain in the ass, and I just never. I owned years ago. I think maybe 10 years ago. I briefly owned a white Tom Anderson, a 1992 Tom Anderson Pro-Am, and it had a collar, whatever they're called.
Yeah, that was a crap.
Yeah, and yeah, crap version of a Floyd. But then I ended up buying a Charvel, a nice Charvel. I don't know what, a standard sort of scratch Charvel that had a Floyd, and obviously it was better than the Kaler, but I still didn't.
Well, was it floating or was it sitting right on the body?
It was floating.
That's the problem. That's why it's a pain in the ass to you. Because when you're putting strings on it, you tune until it's in tune.
Right.
When you have a Floyd that only goes downward, that's sitting on the body,
right,
it's set up like a Stratocaster. Yes, do you still have to cut the ball end off? Yes.
Right.
But once you tune it up, it's in tune. So that's something to think about.
True.
Eric, your drop C mention prompted a question from Poonage in the chat. He says, "What gauge for the drop C? What string gauge?"
You know what's funny, man? I actually, so I'm 10 to 46 normally, and when I go down to low tunings, I stay 10 to 46, but I just adjust my right hand big time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
I don't string my guitars because it's different. If I was playing in a band that was like, I don't know, like Breaking Benjamin or like Nickelback, like one of those bands that it's just power chords all night, then I would say, okay, you got to find a gauge that, you know, that suits that tuning. But if I'm using a drop tuning as like almost an effect in a way, or I'm using it for like one riff here or there, I can just adjust my my touch.
So Eric, I think what I'm going to do, and Desiree, if you're still here, you're going to kill me, but I think one of my next guitars that I order is going to be an Eric Steckel model, and I'm going to order it with a Floyd Rose.
Wow, great!
Just sitting right on the flat top of the body.
Yeah,
And then I'm going to send it to you for you to check out.
great.
For you to decide if you want them to build you one.
That would be. Thank you.
Because that's a guitar that I'll use all the time. Because I'm a
You
Floyd
would
player.
use it. Yeah, you
I'm a
love
Floyd
that.
player, and I'm also a Knaggs player. So
Right.
to have the two connected, maybe I'll get a tier 2 because I don't know if they'll do it on a tier 3. I think it would probably have to be some sort of custom made thing.
Yeah, it's funny. The Kanai TS, my model, only comes in a 2 or a 1.
Okay, so there you go. So I don't think I could afford a tier 1.
And there wouldn't be a point in getting a tier 1 for a guitar that's got a Floyd on it, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like because it takes up more real estate.
Mm-hmm. And Desiree, she says I'm still here. We need to discuss this. Des, honey, I'm not looking to purchase this thing tomorrow.
Yeah.
But down the line, with one of the guitars that I get,
Yeah.
it's going to be an Eric Steckel,
Very nice.
Knaggs with a Floyd on it.
Very
Hopefully they'll say they'll do it for me. Maybe I'll have to ask you to ask them to do it for me if that's the case.
Sure. Can do.
But I will send it to you for you to check out, and if you love it, have them make you one.
That would be cool, man. I appreciate that. I would love to check it out. I know a good buddy of mine who's a fellow Knaggs player, a young kid, Berkeley grad named Joe Sprunt.
Oh, yeah. Great player.
Yeah, amazing player.
Oh, good. Okay, I'm glad you know him. Yeah, because he's a really underrated player. He deserves more attention than he gets, in my opinion. But he's a good friend. We talk all the time, and he's visited my place in L.A. We've hung out and stuff. And he the last time he came over, he brought his and this is a pretty famous Knaggs because he had it built. He has that the Ted Nugent looking one with the
zebra.
Yeah,
zebra.
Sure.
Yeah.
He has the only zebra Knaggs that they've ever made. He has the Floyd, and he sets up his guitars like, his setups are like amazing. So he hands me his zebra, and I'm playing it, beating the hell out of it. Stays in tune perfect. It's great. But I'll be honest with you, I found myself reaching for the whammy bar just because it was there. I don't think that my playing style, I don't know. I don't think that it's something that I would really incorporate.
Well,
honestly.
And that's okay. And
that's fine.
The way you play,
you don't need that. You don't need that in your bag of tricks. You honestly, it's obvious you don't need it in your bag of tricks. But just say for shits and giggles.
Oh, I want to try.
You want to do a Van Halen inspired song,
right?
Something like in that vein.
Oh, I definitely want to try it.
You should have one. You really should have one. It doesn't have to be a main gig. And Vintage Sounds, I don't buy Frankie Strats. I build them.
Yeah, no, and I certainly didn't mean it like, I don't need to.
No. And we didn't take it that way. At least I didn't take it that way.
Yeah, I just meant my particular style of playing. I don't find myself like when I'm playing just my regular, stop tail single cut guitars. I don't find myself ever reaching. I don't have that phantom thing of like, I keep reaching for something, But when the opposite happens, when someone hands me a guitar with one, I kind of treat it like,
a toy.
Like, my first day with the car keys. Like, this is fun. I'm gonna.
I can give you a better. Give you a better analogy. I just can't say it on here.
Oh, there were a couple other. I was thinking, yeah. We're all thinking.
Yes.
I just like when I play Joe Sprunt's guitars. I on purpose. I overuse that just to have fun with it. But when I watch the videos back, because back in July, he was out in LA and he stopped by my place and hung out for a couple nights, and he filmed me playing his guitar, and I watched the videos back, and I was like, it was just not my favorite playing because I was going to it a little bit too much, so yeah. But I definitely I still would like to spend a little more time and get more acquainted with, because once I would get more acquainted with it, I probably wouldn't use it as much. So
Well, listen, I mean, there are guys that have a sustainer pickup on their guitar that's all they can use, and there are guys that use it tastefully. I think, and two of my very favorite players, I can say that one way and the other. And forgive me, Steve Vai, but I think you overuse it just because you have it, and I think Joe Satriani uses it very tastefully.
yeah, it's funny because I respect the hell out of both of those guys, but I would
Me
have
too.
to say that if the question on the table is taste, I would have to say that Satriani definitely wins that one. You know, and I don't even just mean in I mean just all around as an all around player. I love, for me, what Steve did on Eat 'Em and Smile, to me, was like the pinnacle of what made Steve Vai great. That was like, and I think I don't know if this is true, so somebody will have to correct me on this, but I thought I heard that Steve Stevens loaned Vai the plexi he used on that recording.
Correct, and Stevens was
that
supposed
correct?
to be the original guitar player on that record.
Right. Okay, got it. Yeah.
Exactly right. And I think Vai kept the amp.
Okay. Cool.
But and if you ever listen to this video, forgive me, you are one of my favorite players in the world, and I love you. And I was just making a comparison. So
if he ever watched this video, he would have already cut it off by now. So he didn't hear your he didn't hear your explanation.
Well, someone may tell him, but anyway, I love you. I love you, Steve.
It's cool. Steve actually has a good relationship. Well, the Mezza Barba amps guys, they have a good relationship with Satriani and Vai, because I know that Satriani and Vai both have several Mezza Barba amps in their home studios, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's very cool.
And that's because of I got to do a shout out. My buddy JP Cervoni, who's one of my favorite people that lives in Los Angeles. He's the American distributor of Mezza Barba. So obviously the Mezza Barba man, Pierangelo, lives still in Italy. But his American business partner, JP, has lived in LA since, the 70s or whatever. And JP was this guy that I take the piss out of him all the time, because he was in the 80s. He was in this like Chippendales boy band / male model thing called Lash. And they were like the kings of the Sunset Strip right before the bigger bands came in and knocked them away, like Guns N' Roses and Van Halen. But because of this, JP knows everybody. He knows everybody. Every big player in LA, he knows them. So he's managed to get a Mezza Barba head in the hands of like every big rock star in LA, which is pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I've not. I would love to try one.
Me too.
I mean, they especially. I mean, after listening to what you're doing with them, I mean, who wouldn't want to try one? I mean, they're just.
I was thinking you were going to say after listening to you do it. I could do it.
I don't
just as easy.
Yeah, I mean, you Dave and I have this conversation privately all the time. I mean, you listen to. I mean, Eric's your tone is just God to die for, and every aspect of that. Who wouldn't want to try every aspect of your signal chain? Yeah. We don't have your hands, but we can get your gear.
Yeah.
Nice. The Mezza Barbas are cool, man. Like, people ask me a lot about, like, because people, this is the tough thing about the gear world. People always say stuff like, what do they sound like? And what they mean is, like, what existing famous amp, that's what, you know what I mean? There's always people want to know what something is reminiscent of. And I understand, and that's a fair question that people ask me, but the answer is hard to give because it sounds like a Mezza Barba to me. Like, it doesn't, the closest comparison that I can give you, and it's still not even fair. Imagine if all the quirks and problems about an SLO 100 were removed and maybe a little more gain was added and a little more bottom. I would say maybe that is the closest I could say to what a Mezza Barba sounds like. It's like, okay, here's an example. SLO 100, there's no dispute that's a great amp. no dispute.
Yes, great amp.
But everybody knows that now they're changing this now. I know the new versions, they've corrected this, but I'm talking about the original ones. The effects loop was not well regarded.
No, it sucked actually.
Yeah, it sucked for anything that was a pedal. It totally sucked. And you know, they had a lot of gain, but from like 6 to 10 on the gain knob, it was basically like nothing really. It was just the gain channel was almost just like
it was maxed at 6.
Yeah, it was kind of like 6 on an SLO 100 is like 10, you know. So the Mesa Barba to me is like, okay, they fixed the effects loop, and not just fixed it. I mean, it's perfect. There's literally no sonic difference when you hit that effects loop button. Nothing changes in the tone. That's a big one. It has more gain because it's more modern. It has more bottom. It's more thick. And the knobs are actually more interactive. You know, like the gain knob has a bigger spread than an SLO 100. So basically, it took an SLO 100, fixed all the problems, and added a little bit of, you know, seasoning in there.
Sweet.
Yeah. Awesome.
Sweet. Sounds up my alley.
Yep. They're expensive. I mean, they're about, well, they're cheaper than an SLO, actually. But they're about, you know, all the amps I play. Like I also love the Diesel Herbert amp. To me, it's a modern classic. That one. Even though I endorse Mesa Barba, I'm not gonna throw out my Herbert. It's a great amp. I still think it's great. You know, all these amps are around $4,000, give or take, but they'll never break. So
that's awesome. I got to see one here. I need to see one to play one. Gotta see it.
You know, in the market that you're in, Dave, I mean, it's such a big. I mean, you're right next door to the center of the universe, really, and I'm surprised that there's not one near you somewhere.
Do you know a guy named Anthony Scarlata?
Sure, up in Eastchester Music.
Okay,
but that's far away from me. That's like a 3-hour drive for me.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Is it?
Okay.
Yeah.
He would. I think he's your closest Mesa Barba dealer.
You're probably right. Yeah, he's also the biggest Knaggs dealer in New York.
Yeah, him and I'm not sure who's winning at the moment. Him and Rebel Guitars are.
They're both about the same.
They're both like the biggest dealers of Knaggs in the world. Yeah.
Larry Mitchell goes and does clinics up there whenever he's in New York.
Right.
He'll stay here at my house and then travel up there. I personally have never been there because every time Larry's been there, something has happened to my health, which is crazy. Hopefully this time, if it happens again, I'll be healthy and be able to go.
Yeah, I was supposed to. We had a clinic booked. We had a clinic booked. I think it was, if I remember, I think it was June 26th, if I remember correctly. And of course, that never happened. You know.
Of course, and I was going to go to that because I was fine. I was so hoping to go, and Larry's like, "No, it's not happening."
And it's funny because when you look at how things have happened this year, I remember on our last call, which was right when COVID, like it was like March, it was right when COVID thing was just starting. And I remember we were saying stuff like, "Oh, well, by then, by June, you know, we'll be back." Boy, we were wrong on that.
We missed it. Yeah.
Well, there's a vaccine coming out very soon, and from what I'm
fingers crossed.
From what I'm told, it is full on and does the right thing. So, God forbid anyone that gets it when the vaccine comes out, be on the line. Don't wait for the second batch. Be on the line because the first batch is supposed to be very good.
Yeah, the sooner we can get things open up and get people back doing their thing, the better, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Eric, thank you so much.
Thank you, Eric.
Really, this is really awesome. I could do this all night, but, you know, dialysis comes very early in the morning.
Oh, wow.
But we'll have you on again, and we'll talk more, and it'll just be wonderful. I really
can't wait to hear the new record.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you know,
start with
every record is a progression for you. It's amazing.
Yeah, we're gonna start with just a couple of tracks. You know, we're not gonna push ourselves. You know, like Grandview Drive was the whole product was done in 7 days, including mixing and mastering. And when I listen back to it, I go like, how the fuck did we? I don't even know how we did that. But this time we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this the luxury way. We're gonna really just relax, do a couple studio days here, take some time off, go back in the summer maybe, and really stretch it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very cool.
Great. Best of luck with the candy pickups. They're amazing. I love them.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Anyone have anything last to ask Eric?
There is one more question for Eric, a tone question. Thunder Falcon. Eric, what cabinets do you use and what speakers do you load in them?
Okay, so when I switched to Mezzo-Barb amps, that's when I switched to greenbacks. So before my Mezzo-Barb period, anytime you'd see me on stage or in the studio, it was always V30s. Mm-hmm. So basically from 2018 to now, it's been greenbacks. Anything before that was V30s. And the reason is because the Mezzo-Barb amps suit, he voices the amps around a greenback.
Okay.
So I made the switch to greenback. So if you listen to, a great example is, you listen to my tone on Polyphonic Prayer, which was my 2018 record. That was a Wagner 412 with V30s, British V30s, not Chinese. And then you listen to Grandview Drive 2020. That was a Mezzo-Barb cab with greenbacks. And if you listen to them back to back, like in a good car stereo, it's like a totally different tone.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's cool. I like both.
Yeah. Which Wagner did you use on Polyphonic Prayer?
You mean the cabinet or
the amp?
Oh, okay. So the cabinet was a Wagner with V30s, but the amp, Polyphonic Prayer, the entire record was the Diesel Herbert Channel 3.
Okay. Yeah.
The entire record, and then what we did on Grandview was we used more equipment. So like Polyphonic was like, I brought one amp, I dialed it in, plugged in, and we just said, fuck it, we'll do this for the whole record. Whereas with Grandview, there's like clean tones, there's all different, we used the Trinity, we used the M0, we used the Herbert for something, I can't remember what it was, not as much, we didn't use it as much. But we used one cabinet for the whole record. It was the Mezzo-Barb 412 straight, the straight 412
straight cab.
With 4 greenbacks.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Awesome. I have recently gotten into. I've been a V30 guy for a long time.
Yeah.
But I have recently gone to a mixed cab, V30 and greenbacks.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And I like it.
Yeah, I mean the V30s. I think when I'm playing Wagner heads and Diesel heads, the V30s made sense because. That's kind of like, how do I put it? Wagner kind of voices his amps with a V30 in mind. Whereas Mezzo-Barb voices his amps more in the traditional Marshall sense where it's going to be a greenback cab. Mm-hmm. So basically I had no real reason. It's not that I didn't like V30s. I only switched because Pierangelo said, Eric, I really recommend you use 25s, with my amp. And I said, sure, man, whatever.
It makes sense. I mean, it's tuned to those cabinets, to those speakers.
Yeah. It's funny, man. Pierangelo and I, we get along great, but it's funny. We tease each other because he's obsessed with slant front cabs and I'm obsessed with straight front cabs. His thing is, Eric, no, the mid-range of the slant front is what you got to have. And I'm like, no, the bottom end of the straight front. So him and I go back and forth every time we see each other. We go back and forth on that, and it'll probably never change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's nothing cooler looking than a full stack of B cabinets, one next to each other, because that slant cab, even with two of them, they kind of look funny. With B cabinets, it looks like a mean son of a bitch.
Yeah, the slant, the traditional stack of the head, the slant, and then the straight is like the look of rock and roll. I mean, it's like, even if you've never been, even somebody who's never been to a rock concert in their life, they look at that and they go, that's what rock and roll looks like. Absolutely. And you know what's cool? Pierangelo is such a great guy that when he built my European rig, he actually, in my bottom cabinet, he actually took 4 of his original greenbacks out of his personal Marshall cab and put them in there for me. Now I feel bad because we only did 5 fucking shows and then the world shut down with the new rig. So I feel bad for the guy because he gives me these expensive speakers and they only got 5 shows out of them. But it's in storage, ready to go. So.
Right.
2021.
Well,
it'll be here before we know it.
That's it. That's it. We look forward to our next encounter with you, Eric.
Yeah, you guys. Yeah, appreciate it.
And you and I will talk on the phone. I'm sure you and Ty will talk. Thank you thank you for doing this very last moment. I know I asked you very last moment to do this.
No problem.
Thank you to everyone in the chat that's been watching, and thank you for watching the show week after week. It's definitely a trip, and I'm having the greatest time of my life. Ty, we are partners, and I wouldn't do it with anyone else. It's just awesome doing these shows with you.
You're a sweetheart. Thank you.
Yeah. Right.
EricSteckel.com, everyone. EricSteckel.com.
You got it.
Take care, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Sounds good.
Thank you.